Okay, so I just showed the clinical slides of the steps you would take to make a custom impression coping in the mouth, and it's really a quick process um, if you are used to doing it. For the sake of the hands-on, I'm gonna use this hands-on kit provided by Nebo Biocare, which is actually an angulated screw channel kit, which is kind of convenient for tonight because we talked about it a few minutes ago, and there's a couple things I can go over with the kit. So what we've got here is in this case, an abutment, but it's the same concept. A situation where we have made a temporary restoration for tooth number 8, and theoretically, if we have made the provisional restoration how we want it, then it's already shaped the subgingival portion of the peri-implant soft tissue the way we want for the final restoration. So the concept of the custom impression coping is that we are able to capture the exact soft tissue position as when the provisional restoration's in the mouth, because, as we've said previously, the second you take this out, this tissue starts to collapse. And so if you kind of take your time, oh, we got the wrong impression coping, got to go get another one, 5 minutes later, this soft tissue is nothing like what it was that we formed with the provisional. And so, just as a side note, if someone's healing abutment falls off and 4 hours ago and they come into the office, you pretty much have to do almost second stage surgery. You at least have to numb them up in order to get it back on. So it collapses fairly quickly. So we've got this provisional, and what we're going to do is remove the provisional. In the case of the slides I just showed, I filled this medicine cup with PVS, which is a quick method. If you were to do this more frequently, a cheaper, certainly, and even quicker method is to have a couple analogs, maybe an RP and an NP, sitting in stone in your office, and you can just grab it when you want to make one of these, so that instead of having to fill the entire cup with PVS, you have a very stable analog, and you only have to use enough bite registration material to capture just the area around the actual temporary, which is more convenient. So we're going to take our temporary, we're going to screw it down to this analog, and we can see what we need to capture. So we only need to use enough PVS to capture. I'm saying PVS, I mean bite registration material. You're welcome to use PVS, but you're going to be sitting around waiting for a while. Or you're welcome to use impression material, but bite registration material works way better. In this case, I'm using Futar, which is a side note, in my opinion, is the best bite registration material on the market. This one is the green, which is sort of normal, as I would call it. They also make a red version, which is super hard, which is not quite as easy to work with, but gives a really stable registration. So here I've filled the bite registration material to capture the subgingival portion of our provisional, and we're going to let that set for a few minutes. So as it's setting, just keep in mind that this process is not, it's possible. I'm going to use an open tray impression coping today. You can certainly use a closed tray impression coping if you want for this process, because you still don't really need, you're just adding to the coping. So it's the same exact concept. It's just the coping is a little different shape. You just want to make sure, if you're using closed tray, that you don't fill this registration material up too much, because you still need your impression material heavy body in the tray to capture enough of the coping to make an accurate record. So our material is set. We're going to unscrew the provisional and take it out, and we can see here that we have a pretty nice shape in order to make our custom impression coping. So one thing that you want to do when this is in, that I forgot to tell you, and I also don't have a pen, so I'm just going to describe it. You want to mark the buckle margin, actually anywhere that you can identify. It can be lingual, but the buckle margin with the pen here, just so you know where that is. It just makes it easier to line up in the mouth when you go in, because you'll see when this thing's made, it kind of all looks the same, and it's a little tricky to figure out which orientation you have it. So in this case, you really want to use the smallest impression coping you can. This is a 3/6 impression coping, because what you're going to have to do is fill the area around the impression coping. So what I like to use is bisacryl material. You can certainly use resin if you want, and traditionally people always use GC pattern resin, which is a great material. It takes a little more time. Frankly, in my opinion, in 2022, most of us are more used to using bisacryl. A little more expensive, but the reason I like bisacryl over flowable composite is because flowable composite you have to cure, and sometimes if this is a little bit deeper, it can't cure all the way down, and when you pull the thing out, there's composite that gets mouth shaped down right where the implant abutment interface is, and it just doesn't work out. So a self-curing material of some kind is ideal. So if you have some that's expired, don't throw it away. It's a perfect use for it. And so I'm filling this material to recreate an impression coping that mimics the temporary in the subgingival area. All right, so we're gonna let that set. While I'm letting that set, I'm gonna go over one thing with angled screw channel. So the way that this works, and I think this is brilliant, it's the reason, in my opinion, this is by far the best modality of angled screw channel restoration on the market. First and foremost, you can see our screwdriver in your kit allows for a 25-degree. So you can tighten this screw to 35 Newton centimeters, a normal torque for an abutment screw in the Nova BioCare system, with an angle of up to 25 degrees. So you could actually do it more than 25 degrees, but that's really the limit in terms of being able to clear the screwdriver through the screw axis hole, or else the screw axis hole would have to be so large that it would compromise the abutment. So keep in mind, you can make an abutment, you can make a full contour crown, or you can make a coping essentially that you can fire porcelain to. And so the concept here is that this tie base is separate from the actual abutment, and there's no cement. The thing that holds this tie base, the abutment to the tie base and subsequently to the implant, is the screw. So the screw holds all three pieces together, which I love. There's no cement, and it's a really sturdy restoration. So one thing that happens a lot, and I hear this from other reps, is, and it's happened to me, I just haven't yet failed to recognize what's going on, is this comes back on a model like this from the lab. You unscrew the screw, and take the restoration off, and the little, in a new analog, these typodonts I can barely even screw in, they've been marred up so much, but in a new analog, almost every time this metal tie base stays on the model. So people pick this up, you know, and stick it down and screw it down, and it's an infra-occlusion, and the crown looks crazy and they can't figure out what's going on. I've even seen some that delivered it anyway without the tie base, just screwed the thing to the implant, and that's not gonna work. So you have to keep in mind that this zirconia piece is not the entire apparatus. It's got a tie base associated with it. So that's the angled screw channel. Let's go back to our custom impression coping. So now I'm going to unscrew the impression coping and remove this from the model. And as we can see, we have, and you're going to do this, you'll be able to see better when you do it yourself. We have this material added to the coping, and then this is where it's helpful to have your orientation. When we screw the impression coping down in the mouth now, the patient's not really going to love you because the tissue's probably collapsed a little bit since you took it out. But anyway, the material is supporting the soft tissue in the same way the temporary crown did. And now when we take the impression and we pour the model, we're going to recreate this exact shape. So although it seems rather tedious, it really can be done super easily. In fact, if you unscrew the provisional, your dental assistant can easily do this. So it's really not so much a waste of time. I do it fairly frequently with central incisors, especially if I'm only restoring one central incisor. Occasionally in a highly aesthetic case, I'll do it on a canine or a lateral, but I don't do it every time. I prefer to go digital anyway. You can't really do this right now with digital. But one thing we can do with digital, and I'm not going to talk about it a lot, but you can actually make the provisional, at least in Medit, you can make this a impression coping. You can really make anything an impression coping. So you could actually use the actual provisional as your custom impression coping. I'm not going to talk about that much, but so it is possible. It's just more difficult. So at this point, if everybody could get out there, we'll proceed with the hands-on. If everybody could get out the stone medicine cup and make sure we have an impression coping. We will proceed with the hands-on in groups of 2, so everybody can pair up, and each pair can make a custom impression coping. Along the way, if you want to play with the angled screw channel pieces, we can talk about that too.